Welcome to the Shootin The Que podcast presented by Heath Riles BBQ with tips, tricks, and an inside look at some of the top pitmasters in the game. Now here's your host, Heath Riles.
Welcome back to another episode of Shootin The Que. Today I'm joined by my lovely wife Candace, of course, and we have a very special guest in studio today, a good friend, Mr. Cary Chasteen from Hold Your Horses BBQ. How's it going today, brother?
Doing good. Thanks for having me.
Well, man, anytime you come over, I'm like, Cary, you want to jump on the podcast? I mean, me and you have been friends a very long time, and I mean, kind of tell everybody, I'm going to skip over, kind of tell everybody who you are and how you got started in barbecue for the people that don't know you.
Well, Cary Chasteen with Hold Your Horses BBQ out of Griffin, Georgia. Grew up cooking barbecue and whole hog with my dad. We'd do one every September for the neighborhood, and that was where my love for it started. We cooked on the open pit and threw coals all night. And lo and behold, by the time I was in high school, I was a pitmaster at a barbecue restaurant there out in the country. Home Folks Barbecue. And on Friday and Saturday nights, we'd have a line an hour long waiting to get in to sit on the porch. We'd give them free roasted peanuts and serve them barbecue and catfish. And that was kind of where my start came from. And I don't know, back in 2014, my nephew was cooking a contest down in Thomaston, Georgia, Smoke on the Water, and wanted me to come help him. And I did, and then the next year, we cooked our local contest there in Griffin, Doc Holliday's. He said, why don't we cook against each other and see who's better? And I think we were 21st out of 42 teams or something like that. And that wasn't where I wanted to be. I thought my stuff was good, but competition's a lot different than what you want personally.
It's a lot different in that backyard.
It is. Well, it's different profiles from what you like personally for what you feed the judges. And so the next year before we went back, I started taking some classes, and that was where I met you down in Lakeland. And when I cooked beside you at the Pig Jig, and that was where I got my first racks from, because before you met Candace, you were throwing them away, and I'd pick them out of the trash.
Well, that was the last contest of the season. So I was not throwing them away every contest. And you're talking about the cooling racks,
yeah,
right?
Uh-huh.
But you could bet if the jig come and I didn't have any help, when I got done with shoulders or pork or whatever I was doing, the racks were going in the garbage. They were $3 a piece. Mm-hmm. I mean, I could afford $24 more. It was like 8 racks. I still remember. That's what I used to tell myself. If I can drive all the way to Georgia and spend all this fuel, I can afford $24 more.
Well, that was racks. Where my first racks came from, was out of your trash. I washed them up and used them.
You know, there's a lot of people that have those racks, that have racks from me.
I'm going to say I threw some of those away before the end of some seasons if they were bad enough.
Oh, I mean, you run through them and they get where they're rusty and the coating comes off of them and they just don't last. But.
I know. Well, you've had a really good season so far this year. You really cut your teeth after taking classes, and you've cooked several years. And now, I mean, not that your hard work wasn't paying off before, but it seems like now you're starting to catch a groove a little bit.
Well, I have. I've not cooked a whole lot this year because we're in the process of moving farms. But the ones that I've cooked, I've done well at. And it's just, you know, you meet and talk to people, and you have some collaboration among cooks, and you learn what people are doing. And the biggest thing anymore is just the feel of the meat, learning what you feel in your hands. That's the biggest thing you can pass along to somebody, is learn what the feel and the texture should be. Because the flavors are, you know, you can.
And that's the hardest thing to teach.
It is.
We went through that with Candace.
Well, I feel like we've had that conversation a lot with a lot of other guests recently, too. Just they started doing well once they learned that, like you said. And it's not something you can teach. You have to learn on your own.
I cooked beside a guy out in Pine Bluff, Arkansas last year. I always struggled in brisket. I had him come over and feel mine. And he started probing. And now he does well in brisket because he knows what he's feeling for, what he's looking for, and he got his first GC. And I've had 3 of my students within 3 months get their first GC. And I tell you what, I love that. Be able to pass on what I've learned.
Oh, well, that's really what it's all about. for me. I tell people I learn something every time I cook because no two pieces of meat are the same.
They're not.
And learning what to do or how to overcome a certain situation or push something a little bit further or take it that way, it just comes from experience and learning.
Well, and never giving up, because you got a chance on that cutting board the last couple minutes and you can make some dramatic changes at times.
That's right.
Sometimes you don't think you can, because especially by the time I get to brisket, with me cooking by myself, my taste buds are shot. I had a contest here last year. I got to brisket. Everything I tried on the cutting board didn't seem to change the flavor. I said, well, I knew the texture was perfect. I said, maybe that'll carry me. We wound up getting like second in brisket, and I thought it was just a very flat, no-flavored brisket. And, I vacuum seal everything right after the contest, and then with us being on this carnivore diet, we'll have brisket usually either Monday or Tuesday. I heated it back up in a pot of water. Man, that brisket was absolutely delicious, but I couldn't tell that day. But it was absolutely perfect.
I'm like you. By the time I try a bite of chicken, by the time you have to try the ribs to make sure you have the right bite through. Mm-hmm. I mean, pork is pork, and you might take a bite of a money muscle, but a lot of times it's highly doubted that you even
it's what it feels like when
muscle.
you're slicing. For me, I don't worry
if you know
about
if it's got that spongy feel and it wants to, you know what the feel is supposed to be for the break and the look of that pork, right? How thick you've cut that first slice.
Well, and when I'm slicing, if I'm getting moisture pooled up on the knife when I'm slicing, I know it's there.
That's right. Don't squeeze it out of it. Leave it alone. Mop some sauce on it and seal it.
That's it. Let it go.
That's it.
So you actually kicked off the season with a first place pork 180 in Lawrenceville, Georgia, right?
I did.
So
I had a master judge cooking with me, and I said, what do you think about a money muscle only box? He said, well, I think that if you do that, you've messed up your pork. I said, well, okay. And I took one money muscle that I overcooked intentionally. I made pulled in the middle, and then put 2 rows of 4 medallions down each side. We got done. We were turning in brisket. He says, that might have been the best bite of pork I've ever had. He says, that was absolutely delicious. And then we got 180. And then back in March, we cooked a GBA, which I don't hardly do anymore, but they've got cool chainsaw carved trophies, and I went down and cooked it. And with GBA, it's much like an MBN box. It's full. It weighs 7 pounds. And had pulled in the bottom. I had tubes in it and money muscle. In preliminary, we scored a 599.7. And then we made finals. Got to finals and scored a 598, 6 or 7. And we won finals by 5 or 6 points with a pork box.
I always tell people pork, for me, whole shoulder, in me, and it was the most winningest category. I mean, now they did change it to where you could cook butts, right, or any of that now. But I still, if I was to go cook an MBN, I would cook a whole shoulder to at least serve at finals.
Well, exactly.
I mean, and to me, it's hard when you get to that point of that blind box, like you said, another one in GBA, or when you get to finals in MBN, to beat a shoulder, even a hog or a rib. I'm a rib guy 100% now. I'm kind of swapped. Used to, I was really hardcore on shoulder, but I got tired of staying up all night long.
Well, I remember a time at the Pig Jig, you got a perfect 600 shoulder, didn't make finals.
Yeah. That was a 4th place out. Or was it a 5th?
No, it was 4th place.
4th? Mm-hmm. I mean, I've seen that at Memphis in May
because there were 4 600s in preliminary.
Mm-hmm. I mean, but I think I come back the next year and won it.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah. I've been very lucky in Georgia. After I say that, I've come to Georgia and I got humbled cooking and got beat a couple times. And I was like, I've got to make some more middle-of-the-road changes myself. Mm-hmm. And when I made those few changes, I developed a few more products and things like that. It seems like it really honed in for me in Georgia. And once I learned how to really – when I started getting calls in KCBS in Georgia, it was easy to go to cook an MBN in Georgia.
It is.
I mean, that's kind of the the truth of
It transfers.
It does.
I actually went down and judged at the Pig Jig this year.
Well, tell me that experience. How was that being that many teams?
Well, the first category was hog, and I was shocked that I got it, but I did. We had a really tough hog table. We had 3 that were straight 10s that we just separated 10, 9, 9, and 9, 8 in the comparison. And 3 of the judges that were at our table, we all agreed on the first 3 boxes. The second or the 4th and 5th box were really good. Now our 6th box was
mediocre.
It was very poor. But really the 5 that we had on that table were all darn good. But we had 3 that it could have been a toss-up between the 3 of them because they were all that good. The ribs, we had 5 boxes of spares and 1 box of baby backs.
So do you see more spares at the Pig Jig now?
Yeah, you do. And the baby backs looked absolutely wonderful in the box. I couldn't wait to get into them. Got into them, and they were tough as nails. You bite into them and go, dong, 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 dong.
That's the worst ones. It's the worst ones.
But, I mean, they were so pretty, and they looked so good. But I was so disappointed because they needed another 45 minutes.
Wow.
I mean, they were that far.
I have to ask this. Were the spare ribs in 2-bone sections?
No.
Single bones?
All single bone.
Wow.
That's probably, in my opinion, probably one of the few MBN contests where that would work. Because
Right.
around
It
here,
is, because
clearly,
that's-
yeah.
Now, we've seen St. Louis Ribs Final before. You remember when Mike Davis cooked in Arkansas? And it come down to me and him, and he turned in spares that day.
Oh, I mean, I'm not saying it hasn't been done. It's just
we
rare.
actually seen a spare final at Memphis in May.
Memphis in
Yeah,
May,
that's
too.
happened.
2 years ago, 3 years ago. Was it last year?
Well, it was the last time I cooked with you at Memphis, we had a spare in the finals.
That was 3 years ago.
Yeah.
3 years ago.
I mean, that's what I'm saying. It happens, but it's
I mean, a
rare.
spare rib, with it laying on the belly and having belly meat on top of it. Mm-hmm. A baby back rib is really good when it contains really good, like marbling and all that, right?
Right.
But a regular commodity hog that has a lot of loin on it, or maybe the cut was a little bit different, right? Mm-hmm. And when you've handled a bunch of baby backs, you know what I'm talking about. When that loin runs up and covers 3/4 of the rib
Right.
versus only 1/4 of it, that will dry out quicker and not be as moist and as juicy of a rib. And that's where those spare ribs are really, when the spare ribs are cooked right, they're hard to beat.
They are.
They really are. But
Especially with the ribs that we're getting today.
they are.
Some of these Prairie Fresh Naturals and these primes.
Well, that's me with a baby back. When I feel like when I cook that baby back rib, when it's cooked right, it's got moisture. The tenderness is there. And like you said, you wanted those baby backs to be right in that box.
Oh, I did. I mean, my mouth was just watering looking at the box, and I was so disappointed.
So, Ada, I'm going to ask this before I even make a statement. You ate with your eyes first, and you'd already chosen that baby back rib over those other 5 boxes because it was different. And it was sitting there.
Yeah,
And
and
it just
looked
looked
great.
so good.
It did.
How many waterfalls of ribs did it have in it? 3 to 4?
3 rows of 6.
3 rows of 6. Yeah, it's a perfect box. A perfect box. 9 racks.
The front row was double cut, the middle row was single cut, and the back row was double cut.
They're getting a little wild these days, ain't they?
So,
We was traditionalists over there, and we was doing it hardcore.
right.
I mean, but to me, when we were taught in MBN and MIM, you want a double bone rib so you can tear it apart and see how tender it is, right?
Right.
And
then you look for the speckle on the bone.
the single bone is so easy to achieve biting a tender bite off of it.
It is.
When you really, if you've had both classes and taught, it's a little bit different, but both of them does not teach the degree of judging class that it needs to be taught.
Right.
In my opinion, building the boxes that are not good, you know, and just throwing them in there. You don't see boxes like that when you go to a contest. You see professional boxes.
Right.
And I think that they need to do those boxes, but they also need to have a team really build the correct kind of box.
They show pictures.
Yeah, they do show pictures.
They show pictures, but I mean,
it was just like for the longest, and I'm not bashing the Memphis Barbecue Network, they would only, at a judge's class, use a shoulder for training. Right. They would not ever cook a hog, or they would not ever cook a rib.
No, because I've taught the class at the Pig Jig down there, and the shoulder's the only thing we ever
The first
cooked.
time they ever asked me to cook for a class, I'd done the pork like they asked, and I also cooked ribs. And when it come down to do it, I said, I have a rib presentation as well. I mean, that I would like to do, because the new judges need to hear that and see that. Mm-hmm. And I will say that Memphis in May has really answered that need for it and brought back. They started last year again. Once you take a judge's class, you go out with a trained judge on site. Mm-hmm. And I don't mind serving. We don't. There's plenty of food, you know, putting another plate out for another judge there, right?
Well, you know, and that's
mentor.
like, you know, that even in GBA, I despise the training class, the judges' training class, because they only cook loin because it's cheap. The thing of it is, if they would do a judges' class at the contest, because every team cooks enough to make finals, or 90% do if they know what they're doing, you could have those teams build a finals box and turn it in for the judges to get actual product. And I think you get a much better class of judges, because then they get to see all three boxes and they get to see what's actually being turned in instead of a bunch of crappy loin.
That's a good point. And I think that in the end, when they teach their judges classes at a contest, they teach them the day before.
Well,
so somebody's having to cook like a shoulders or ribs.
Well, because then those judges go and judge the contest.
Even KCBS with their training. You know, you look at.
Gosh, it's been so long since I did that.
It's just terrible with what they do for the classes.
Yeah, it's not. Well, have you cooked one of the new Rib Association contests?
I have not.
I've heard nothing but great things.
There's not been any down in our area, and
maybe you need to bring one over that way.
This year, with me not traveling as much, I just haven't done anything.
Those to me seems like the one-day events is going to end up being the cat's meow before it's over.
Well, it's just so much cheaper.
Well, and at the cost of things nowadays, it costs really a lot of money to go have a good time competing with your friends trying to win a trophy.
It does.
And I would hate to be out chasing points anymore myself personally. I couldn't imagine. I mean, now that I'm kind of out of the groove of it, I don't know.
Well, you look in KCBS this year, Brad has just run away with it. You know, he's sitting there at 8 already.
8 GCs?
8 GCs.
Okay, so we're into March, and I'm going to pull a Travis Clark here.
April.
April.
It's almost May.
Well, it's almost May, but the season ends when?
October.
Yeah, I got to agree. It's going to be hard probably somebody to run Brad down.
But
it could be done.
Oh, it can. Because you think back.
It's just an average of your 10 best contests, correct?
Well, Blaine Hunter one year didn't start cooking until Memorial Day weekend and won Team of the Year with 10 grands. So, I mean, it can be done.
I mean,
depends if another person out there wants to hustle and do all that travel and stuff too.
I know. And I will say Brad is definitely hustling, like you said, jumping on an airplane going here this weekend and then jumping on an airplane going here for another one and back and forth. And he's popping GCs all over the country from one coast to coast, and that's very hard to do.
It is.
Very
he can do it everywhere but Georgia. Georgia's his kryptonite.
I don't know. I've seen Tennessee get him a few times in Mississippi.
Yeah.
I mean, it's I don't know, but this year's going to be interesting talking about Brad. I didn't really know until earlier this week that he's cooking whole hog himself at Memphis in May. And Brad's a hell of a cook. I ain't taking nothing away from him. It's whole hog category is going to be dueling it out this year for sure. It's going to be interesting
to see.
And he's cooking on a new outlaw, so which looked pretty cool. So
I tell you what Jay's doing with some of these hideouts is incredible.
I mean, I seen the one pull in yesterday at South Haven Springfest that
they picked it up. They picked it up on the way to Lebanon in March.
I would really like to have one for the convenience of just having all that on one little trailer to go hang out and have a good time. I think that is really, really cool. I don't know. I probably need to get rid of a pit before I buy another one, though.
Yeah, there's many sitting there that haven't even been used or haven't been used in a long time.
Yeah, that's a better word. Some of them compliments they haven't been used in a while, but I might get that itch, you know.
No, you won't.
You don't think so?
No.
Just, I don't know.
I
don't know what you'd get rid of.
It's gotten a lot easier for me this year with having so much going on at home. I'm not sitting there on Saturday looking at awards and stuff around the countryside, seeing what everybody's doing, and I don't even look at points anymore.
I mean, that's kind of the best way to be.
And I'm just cooking the contests that I really want to cook. You know, I cooked Sipping Swine, I cooked Lebanon. I've come here. The next one I cook's the Invitational. Then I'll do Greenwood and Galax, and that might be my season. Well, I'll probably go do one in North Carolina in September because I got an entry into it the other day.
And I don't mean when I say I might get an itch. I already have the itch, but I don't want to cook a lot. But there is, like you said, a few contests that I never made it before that I wouldn't mind going and cooking.
Well,
once, just for the weekend.
One of my bucket lists is going up to Hill City and cooking Bobby's contest. If it wasn't so blame far.
I know.
You know, that's one I have on my bucket list. I want to go back to Murfreesboro.
We've missed Murfreesboro a couple of years. I actually told Candace that I wouldn't mind going to judge Murfreesboro and not cooking, but just going. And sometimes maybe it's not even going to cook for me, but maybe going to sign up to be a judge. We're both judges, but just to see everybody.
Well, that and just, yeah, exactly.
I mean, we don't get to get out like we used to, and our baby is 3 now, so we can do a few things like that. So I don't want to be gone all weekend, but going and spending Saturday to get back home judging something, that is something maybe we're looking at to do a couple times, plug in a couple of those during the year. But we don't want to commit to, a dozen. We're not trying to do anything like that.
That was part of why I went and judged at the Pig Jig. I'd had a couple of people ask me to come cook with them. I didn't want to do that because I didn't feel like I could turn one down and accept it for another and hurt somebody's feelings. And I decided I'd go down and judge. Still get to see everybody and walk around and visit after I was done judging. And it wound up being a pretty good day.
Well, I can tell you, after my whole demeanor kind of changed with it to have a little more fun when we went 3 years ago up and we kind of cooked as the Band of Outlaws in Murfreesboro. You didn't go. But I did. We cooked hog shoulder rib, and Mark Williams cooked the KCBS side, and I mean, we just had a good time. Everybody chipped in.
Something like that would just be a blast to go do every once in a while.
Yeah, and to me, putting together a team and going out there and cooking a KCBS, and everybody's responsible for one category, and we just having a good time. I don't want to be that serious anymore. I look at it as like Jeff and Darren Worth, right?
I mean,
they go out and what's that? Teddy's Camp,
I don't
is what
even
they
know.
call
Camp,
themselves.
yeah. When they're down in Florida, that's what they cook under. Teddy
And they're
Camp.
just having a good time.
And it might include Luke Darnell or it might include somebody else. I mean,
That's right.
and just have, because I've sat down there with them in January and we've had a ball hanging out.
Well, it's like Jeff, I think they needed, an extra team to make it a qualifier. Maybe they needed an extra team
we were
to
down
ensure
there.
nobody missed a category, and he cooked one rack of ribs.
He came to my trailer and we injected his one pork butt. We did his brisket point, and he did get 2 racks of ribs, and he cooked everything on a little Traeger.
And he only cooked like 7 pieces of chicken, right?
Yeah.
He cooked everything on one Traeger grill.
So,
I mean, but he got calls, right?
yeah, he did.
Yeah, I remember hearing.
I mean, he ended up getting.
He think he was 3rd overall.
Yeah, 3rd overall. That's what I thought. It was a high of calls. But that's the kind of stuff to me. Taking a small grill and going out there and hanging out and laughing at everybody else being so serious and just having a good time with it.
That's like where Brad went and GC'd. Him and Drew Davis both went and GC'd a contest cooking on one drum, just screwing around.
Yeah. Why not? I think we should do that.
I mean, that's a challenge in itself.
Oh, Drew, I'm going to tell you, Drew is a
Drew's
beast.
done that a few times.
He is.
I'm going to keep messing around, and Drew's going to beat my record at South Haven.
Yeah.
He's got several years to go, though.
I'm hoping to put a stop to him this year.
How many times? He's won 3 times, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And 2 years ago, I thought we had him.
I think we got 9, so he's got a way to go.
He was first in chicken, and I was second. I was first in ribs, and he was second. We were like third and fifth, and third and sixth in pork. And I knew my brisket was really good that day.
You really had a good brisket last year.
Yeah, and I sat there. They called me 6 for brisket, and I said, "We're in pretty good shape here." And then damn, he didn't 180 it.
I mean, we were lucky enough to catch Drew. Was it doing pork turn in? I believe it was pork turn in at the Royal Oak Invitational.
It may. I don't remember which category.
And he was just easy going about his.
Well, he's pretty,
on the drum and just so calm about doing it. While he was talking to us building the box and whatnot, the whole time I said, "Do you mind me filming this?" He's like, "Nope."
You know, he's pretty minimalist, cooking off the tailgate of his truck and his Jambo at most contests. And you know, he's not doing anything difficult. He's just hitting his marks.
Hitting tenderness.
Yeah.
I mean, hitting tenderness, that's all it takes. Pretty wild. Well, you know, how have you changed anything in 2025 for your flavor profiles or anything? Or kind of stuck with what you're running? Really haven't changed a whole lot. Maybe played with a little bit of my finish dust and stuff. I've tweaked a little bit on that, but really I haven't changed sauces. I've gotten simpler on my rubs. I use 1 rub for brisket. I use a combination of 2 rubs for both pork and ribs, and I use 2 rubs for chicken. What would you say is your best category so far?
It's been pork this year.
And what would you say is your worst?
Brisket.
And brisket used to be your best category, right?
Was hands down. But yet, a guy running my brisket profile 180 and got his first GC 2 weeks ago.
I mean, do you think it's maybe just luck of the draw of the table you hit with what teams you hit?
A lot of times, yeah.
I mean, you can read a score sheet and kind of tell that kind of stuff, or if your tenderness maybe was off or it seized up a little bit.
Well, and I had a couple of briskets that were kind of old that I were cooking, and I think that probably had something to do with it. But they were still good to me. I mean, I thought, and tenderness was perfect.
If you don't mind me asking, are you still cooking A9s?
I am.
It's what range do you like on those yourself?
16 to 18 pound. I mean, you can get the 21, 22 pounders. They get wider, they get longer, but they don't necessarily get any thicker.
Well, you're cooking them or cutting them down and putting them in using a brisket caddy or anything like that?
Yeah, I start them in a caddy.
So you're only going, 8 inches wide or something, 9 inches wide?
6.5.
6.5, okay.
Yeah. I mean, it's 6.5 wide. Now, I cook them long. I mean, when I start them, they'll be hanging out each end of the caddy because I got room on that outlaw. But by the time I drop them off that microwave shelf, they're usually within the caddy. They'll draw up 3 to 4 inches in length.
Yeah, and puff up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's the good thing about cooking at high heat like that, for sure.
Are there any competitions out there that you've never made it to that you want to?
Hill City, South Dakota's one. Always wanted to go up and do Washington Island in Wisconsin.
Oh, wow. Those are
I've always thought that'd be a neat one to go do.
I had never heard of that one.
Yeah, they canceled it last year. It was always a double out there on the island. You had to take the ferry across.
Oh, you talking about Death's Door?
Yeah, Death's Door.
Now, okay, I have heard of that, and that was actually on one of my bucket list things. Hearing Darren talk about that as many times he has, and everybody else, and Jeff, and all those, that is one of the cool ones. There's no cell service or anything.
I've heard about that one.
I mean, that one, and my only other one I really kind of want to go do is DC Battle. But it's so damn expensive, and it's a pain in the ass getting in and out up there. But
that's the only reason I've never went and cooked it. I had the same.
Getting a picture of my trailer with the Capitol in the background would be really cool.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah, because isn't that the one like where you have to set up at like 2 or 3 in the morning and something
come
crazy?
in on Thursday night
like
and everything
weird.
else,
Yeah.
and out Sunday, and
Yeah.
it's 2 days of cooking. But I tell you what, the picture that Childs has his trailer with the Capitol in the background. That's just so cool.
Yeah.
And I'd love to have one like that of mine.
I know. That is a very iconic picture to me, for sure. Is there any upcoming comps you looking forward to this year?
The Invitational at Lebanon. I traditionally do really well there.
Is it at the Wilson County Fairgrounds?
It is. It's a fabulous facility.
I cooked there probably 25 years ago against Johnny Trigg. First time I ever met him, actually, and beat him. I had a 7th place rib call. I remember Wilson County Fairgrounds very well.
I mean,
personally,
it's just a great facility, and Jason and them do a tremendous job getting teams in and out. They have the people there gather up the trash. The water's good. Power's fantastic. You know, it's just a phenomenal facility to be holding the Invitational. Last year on Sunday, I cooked a 709 and finished 3rd.
Oh God.
it happens. It happens. Ooh, 709 to finish 3rd, that is pretty rough.
Yeah.
And on top of that, I had a perfect 180 ribs.
What was the score that day that won?
711 or 712.
The highest I've ever took a contest is 712 myself. Mm-hmm. In a case of
Well, you know, I was looking the other day. I have
I believe that's right.
9 or 10 700 stickers on the trailer. Only one has ever won me a GC.
Really?
Wow.
And that happened in Carrollton, Kentucky. And that was right after I'd taken a spill on my Segway. Had a horrendous crash on it on Friday night. Landed flat out on the skateboard park on the concrete. I was bruised from the back of my knee to the top of my head.
We were laughing at you on that thing yesterday.
We seen you on your Segway yesterday, and I said, he's got his dog. He's on the phone, on the Segway. What in the hell is he doing? And you're just making the corner, and I'm like, all he needs is a cocktail in his hand. This is classic.
Yeah.
And a cigarette hanging out of his mouth, and it's classic.
But I'd had a tremendous wreck, and I mean, it just knocked the fool out of me. I got up at 4 on Saturday morning, took 6 leave, trying to decide if I was even going to light the pit or not. Went ahead and lit it at 4:30. Cooked a 702. Second place was a 690.
Wow.
And that's the only 700 that's actually won me a GC.
That's crazy. So do you have I know we kind of talked about this at lunch yesterday, but for everybody else, and it may not have been your favorite, but do you have a favorite trophy from, I know you were showing us some pretty cool pictures yesterday, but I don't know if that's necessarily your favorite.
My apple from Murfreesboro.
Okay.
You know, I've got that first place apple at 19 for winning brisket up there. That one will forever hold a special place because that was the last year before
Mike
passed
away. And then that day, Pat Burke sat down and talked with us for
in a circle right over
an hour and a half. Yeah, I mean, you're gonna miss those people when they're gone.
You're right,
and they pass a lot of knowledge along.
You're right,
and the fact that I got to do that was really special.
That place was my first grand championship myself, Murfreesboro. So it will always hold a special place in my heart, and especially since Mike and Pat are both huge mentors of mine, and just the conversations from both gentlemen after me winning, and like Pat calling after I won the Pig Jig and things like that, and just iconic moments in my barbecue career. Very fortunate to have, know those gentlemen.
Well, we were out at the Royal the year that Mr. Pat was inducted into the Hall of Fame, and he came by the trailer and visited. That meant the world to me, for him to come track us down and come say hello and that kind of stuff.
He is on my list. I hope to get him on the podcast one day if he's up to it. I would like for...
Well, talk to Jordan. Jordan's very close to him because they're nearly neighbors. And
yeah. I need to get him over. Really, really good guy.
Yep.
Well, we've talked a lot about barbecue. I have another topic I want to go into. You're almost, not almost, you do play a lot of cards, a lot of poker. So have you you had any good runs lately on the poker tables?
I have not played at all, hardly. The last 2 years, I've not been playing at all.
Been taking it easy.
Well, I have found with poker, as I've gotten older, I can do really well for the first 7 or 8 hours in these big tournaments. But after that, I'm just so mentally wiped out, I start making stupid mistakes. And it's hard as you get older.
Because they go on for hours and hours,
yeah.
right?
I mean, you play 16 hours a day.
Yeah, that's crazy.
I mean, we know we were in Vegas a few months back for a convention, and I'd walk past the poker room, and they would be going in, right? And we're on the show floor 12 hours a day, and they're still playing.
We're done
like it's
walking
no
back
big
out.
deal when we're
Right.
walking out, and it's like, now the tables are down to, less tables.
Yeah.
But it's like, my God. And then one day we come back by, and it was down to one table. They were still playing.
Right.
And they had never stopped. And I'm like, wow. And I think there were 4 players still left then.
And the smaller tournaments, like the daily tournaments that they run, they're 60 to 100 people. I can do well with those, but the big ones, I just don't have the capacity anymore to play them.
So how did you first get into playing poker?
Well, started playing local bar games at home that were paying out cash and kind of honed my skill. And then I started going to casinos and playing. And matter of fact, I was up here in Tunica one weekend. It was during a World Series event, and we had been playing most of the weekend and built a pretty good bankroll. And Sunday morning, I went and sat down at a pretty juicy cash game and took one of the worst beats I've ever had in my life. $19,000 out the window that quick. And at the time, I was playing to support our household. I just bought the trucking company from Mom and Dad, and I wasn't drawing a salary, and so I was playing cards at night, making ends meet. And but I'll never forget this hand. We sat there. It had gotten raised and re-raised, and I looked down at pocket jacks, and the flop comes out. Jack 9-9. Got a full house. I check. A guy fires. Comes back to me. Everybody else folds. I re-raise him. And he raises me. I just shove all in. I mean, there's not a hand out there that can beat me at this point. He turns over ace-9, and I got jacks full of 9s. Turns a deuce of spades, and the river was a 9, giving him quads. And I went home broke that weekend. So from that broke me up playing the big cash games, and I transitioned into more tournament style. Wow. And that was a tough weekend.
I've had some tough weekends, but they've not ever been that tough when I was young and dumb. Way before I had this business. Well, we were in Las Vegas cooking for the World Food Championship, and I got down about 7,000. But by the time the week was out, I was up about 3,500 when I left and paid for the trip. But being down 7,500 is probably the worst I've ever been. But that same trip, I watched another gentleman, I don't want to call his name. He was probably down closer to 40,000 and going to get markers at one point. And this was all before he even walked in his room in Las Vegas. Before he even checked in, his hotel was still sitting at the stand, and he was playing the card table on the pool deck of
Golden
Nugget Casino.
Wow.
And I will just never forget that moment watching that much money leave, over dumb card moves. Like, what are you taking a hit on that for? What are you doing? Like, I just never, and it was alcohol induced.
Well, I sat out there at Caesars one time on a
Person almost
blackjack
got
table.
kicked out the plane that day.
Yeah.
And I was playing $100, $200, $300 a hand. And a guy comes in and sits down and said, "Do you mind if I play?" And I said, "No." He takes a $100,000 marker. 10 minutes later, it takes another $100,000 marker. 30 minutes later, he says, I'm tired of playing around, give me $1 million. And he gets up and walks away with about $750,000 that he had out of his marker. And I said something to the pit boss. And he says, yeah, he's a regular. He's got a $40 million credit line.
Oh, my gosh.
He says, but one night he walked out of here with $110 million and killed our third quarter.
Whoa, that's crazy.
$110 million.
Yeah, and he was some real estate mogul out of L.A.
Playing cards?
Yeah. Playing blackjack.
I mean, I like blackjack myself. That's
I mean,
what I play
they raised
now.
the table limits to $30,000 a hand for him.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
I mean, we...
Where was that?
Is it Caesars?
Caesars. We used to play baccarat. We got real hot and heavy into that at one time. I mean, hey,
I don't know if that's considered a real. I mean, it is a real game, but
it
it's
is.
not.
It's a good money game if you understand how to play.
And
Matter of fact, my host out of Biloxi married a farmer up here. And because he used to be one of her clients, and she lives up here now. And,
Really?
Yeah. I run into him at Tunica every once in a while when I'm over there.
It's so that's a good question. Do you run into other people at casinos that you see gambling at other casinos?
Oh, yeah.
At other ones?
Very much so.
Very much so. Mm-hmm. And I don't really know how to ask this question, but how many people have you come in contact with that basically live in the casinos and gamble professionally? Because, you know, every time we've ever been to casinos, we've seen like the same person every time. Like
mostly
sitting at a
men
table.
by themselves.
Yeah.
But I mean, it doesn't
Well,
necessarily
that's
mean
the-
they're single. But
No, but
you
a
see
lot of
them
them
when they're by
wives are at the
themselves.
salon and that kind
Yeah.
of stuff too, or out shopping.
Yeah, of course.
Because my host used to take care of Melissa really well. You know, she'd go have a spa day and that'd be $1,000, $1,500. But
That
you know,
can
they
happen
would,
easy.
they would comp that. But yeah, there's a lot of them around, and there's a lot of grinders out there that make their living doing it just like I used to.
Well, one of the coolest poker stories to me was Fred Smith getting on a plane and basically not knowing how he was going to pay FedEx's payroll and going and making it at Vegas before he went bankrupt. And that's what really turned FedEx around, was one night of gambling. And he come home to make payroll.
So I'm going to assume you've been to Vegas several times since you know, have you been lately?
I have not been.
Have you been
4
since COVID? Let me ask that.
Not to Vegas, I haven't.
It's just, it's so
It's not the
different.
same Vegas.
That's why I was just going to ask your opinion if you had been. It's like he was saying when we went before for the World Food Championships. That was back in what?
2013, 14?
Yeah, somewhere around there. And they say it changed after COVID, I guess. But we just went back this year for the first time, and it's just different. It's just not the same. Which I know it's a different world we live in everywhere
It is.
now.
And the
so-
biggest thing out there now, you can't hardly walk down the street without getting high.
No.
It was not a lot of people there.
Really?
We
It's
thought.
so that's one of the things. I know when we went before, it was just booming. You couldn't go anywhere. Like you had to. We were fortunate to have our own driver, so he knew the ins and outs and picked us up at back doors and took us to back doors and
Right.
that kind of thing. But I remember just seeing the lines of people waiting on cabs, and that doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
There's no line. There's no wait. There's the street out on the strip is not crowded.
No.
It just traffic's just flowing like normal.
I mean, it looks like
And
a
that's
ghost
not
town.
what it was when we went at all.
Well, and you know, part of that too could be they've opened up gambling in so much other parts of the
True.
country.
That's true.
People don't have to go to Vegas anymore to gamble.
That's true.
I mean,
I don't guess I've ever really been to any other. I mean, to Tunica here, but honestly,
Well-
I'm disappointed in the way Tunica is now
Yeah,
versus
from
what it used to be.
Exactly.
But
you know, several years ago, we took a trip just to go to Atlantic City.
I've
that's
heard
something
that
we've never done.
I've heard that that's really nice, but I haven't been personally.
Well, it was interesting. at night you could still see some of the old school Italians holding court outside of some of the nightclubs and stuff at some of the casinos, and it was pretty easy to pick them out. And you know, you go to some of the Italian restaurants and stuff, and there's the guys over in the corner that were very much old school.
That'd be pretty cool to see some of that.
But
I like that stuff.
we kind of enjoyed our trip to Atlantic City. We went out and did the boardwalk thing and that kind of stuff, and rode the Ferris wheel out on the pier and hit several of the bars and stuff like that. But I didn't feel as safe in Atlantic City as I would walking in Vegas.
Gotcha.
That makes sense.
So we were very limited. You know, we would go during the daytime to do stuff.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of like New Orleans. It's difference between day and night.
Mm-hmm.
And
We got to know what street.
And
to go
different
down.
streets to go down and which ones not
Exactly.
to. Yeah, I agree with that.
I've gotten a little more cautious in my older age.
Darn right.
Okay, but in my younger days, I wanted to know where the danger was at, because that's where I was going. I remember when I got off a cruise one time in Mexico, they were like, "Don't go up here to this street. You know, you need to stay within the suggested area." They passing out these maps. I made a beeline to that street. I don't know why, but I did, and
Just
I went down
attracted
it.
you, yeah.
Oh yeah, and they bothered you, and you went in stores. They were trying to sell you everything under the sun, if you know what I mean. It was just completely crazy. I got off that street really quick, but you know, I'm not that way anymore. I think that comes with maturity probably. And
Well, you know, you look at Memphis.
oh Lord, we could have a deep, long. We ain't got enough room on this podcast.
Well, yeah, we
I
don't.
know. I mean, because I just saw a thing last week about it being the #1 murder capital in the world.
I think we just probably have a juvenile problem here. Is the main problem.
That's right. Because they don't have respect anymore. They're not growing up in two-parent families.
You know what it is, right? Nobody's holding any family reunions and barbecues. If we were out cooking more,
That's right.
doing barbecues and church functions and barbecues like it used to be, and fire department fundraiser barbecues, and
Exactly.
you know, community involvement. I think those type of things, and I'm not trying to turn it back to barbecue at all, but if
But
you
it's
really
the
think
gathering
about
of people and having your elders around to pass stuff on.
city parks and things like that, the grilling out times of the season, and bringing the community together, and basketball and football and kids playing in games and things like that. It's not like it was.
No.
And I was talking about this to somebody the other day. I used to always love going to a family reunion to meet people, see cousins and people you did not see but once a year, and the food was always just spectacular, right? Tables of food that everybody brought something. Where is that out now?
Well, that's like in our family. We finally have died off and don't have a reunion. We used to have 150 people at Mom and Dad's place every year, and it was held at the city park before that. When I was a kid, we had the big pavilion and huge gathering, and then later on, Mom and Dad would host it at their house, and we'd put up a big tent and everything else, and it was nothing to have 120 people at their house. And the last year we held it, I think there was 16 or 18 people. Just don't.
Yeah, things are not like it used to be for sure.
No.
Well, it's kind of like you were saying, the elders. I mean, I don't know what changed, but a lot of the elders and family kind of held that family together. And then once they have passed away and stuff, it's almost like, and I'm speaking from personal experience. I know when my great-grandmother and great-grandfather on my mom's side were alive, we spent holidays all as a huge family. Well, now they've passed on long ago, and, you know, there's still family out there, but we don't get
Don't
together
see 'em.
anymore
Don't-
because their house was like the central location that we did that. And it was kind of like once they passed away, well, nobody did it anymore.
Right.
I hate to say this, but the only time you really see those people
Is at a funeral.
It's at a funeral.
or visitation. And that's a hard pill to swallow these days. That's why, I don't know, I just think food brings more people together than anything, and it's not just about blood sometimes. Anybody can be your family in the grand scheme of things when you accept it that way.
Right.
And, wouldn't it not always be in blood and bringing different values and different things into, something like that, a friendship, food bringing people together can be a good thing, especially in today's society. And I personally would like to see more of that myself. But
Yeah.
I don't know. Interesting.
Well, I'm blessed. You know, I've lost my dad, but I've still got my mom. She's still traveling, still going, still doing. Got
Still
her
kicking.
camper, and yeah, it's neat to watch her still traveling and doing what she wants to do.
Nothing like it. Well, it's always a good time shooting the Que, Cary, with you. Thank you for coming again in studio. Where can everybody find you at if they want to connect with you on socials and things like that?
Cary Chasteen under Facebook and Instagram, or Hold Your Horses BBQ on Facebook.
All right.
I haven't gotten into the TikTok and that kind of stuff. I've just gotten on Twitter, and I've kind of fallen in love with it, but I don't post on there yet.
Well, nothing wrong with that. Well, Cary, thank you again for coming in. Always great to shoot the Que. We'll see y'all next week on another episode of Shootin The Que.
If you have any comments or suggestions for future episodes, please feel free to reach out to us on our social media channels. Leave us a review if you've enjoyed the show. And until next time, keep shooting the Que.